Okay, so today's assignment is Lab 2A, Circles and Curves. We're going to be talking about how to add, well, basically fillets and rounds to our corners, and then a little bit later we'll start talking about how to effectively use your compass to make full-fledged circles in the shapes that we're drawing, which isn't that difficult, except there are some quirks, I suppose, of the compasses that we have. Alright. Draw across there to get my title block done. Looks like I need to sharpen my lead holder. Those lines are quite a bit bigger than I wanted. Let's see here. That's better. Okay, so alright, so the shape that we're going to do for Lab A today is fairly basic. The only difference between it and something that you've done before is that three of the corners are curves instead of regular 90-degree corners. So, as always, the first thing that we need to do is find the center of our page, and might vary a little bit for everybody, but for me it's just over 5 1/8 for the horizontal center, and the vertical center is, it's like 3 1/2, 3 5/8 right there. So I'm going to start off with a little plus to indicate the center. And the shape that I'm drawing, the shape that we're all drawing actually, will fit inside of a box that's 6 inches wide and 3 inches tall. Okay, so once I've found my center, we take the square, and since it's 6 inches wide, we put the 3-inch mark on the center, and then mark off at 6 inches and 0 for our sides. In order to save myself a step later, I went through and I made my center marks even with the center of the page horizontally. So now all I have to do is take my vertical measuring tool. In this case I'm using my 30, 60, 90 triangle, and I only need to set 1.5 inches on that mark. And now I can go ahead and draw my 3-inch line straight down. But because I'm also using the parallel rule at the bottom, I can go ahead and draw my cross line as well. Because it's 3 inches tall, we measure 1.5 inches up and down from that center mark. So we have 1.5 inches up to there, and then another 1.5 inches makes 3.
We go 1.5 inches up and 1.5 inches down.
Yep. Or an easier way to look at it might be just to say that we put the 1.5" mark on, or the 1.5" measurement on the mark, and then made a mark at 0 and 3. So we should end up with a full-fledged box on the paper. We're going to take a couple of measurements off of this box. The first one is going to be a mark that is 1 inch over from the upper left-hand corner. And then another one that is 5 inches over from the upper left-hand corner. And then finally, one that's 3/8 of an inch over from that. So it'd be 5 3/8 inch over from the left-hand corner. So we have this mark here, which is an inch over. This mark here, which is 5 inches over. And this mark here, which is 5 3/8 inches over from this corner. Five 3/8, yeah. Huh? Can you speak louder and take your hood down? What are you? Your box isn't even? I'm gonna need you to speak up.
So my box is straight 6 inches.
Okay.
Still 5
5
3/8.
3/8 from this corner, yes. It's supposed to be 6 inches across. I guess the other way you could look at it is you need to be 5/8 of an inch from the right-hand corner. On the right-hand side at the lower right-hand corner, I'm going to put the 1 inch mark on my square or scale and measure 1 inch up from the bottom and make a mark there. And then I'm going to do the same thing again in roughly the center of the page. 1 inch up from the bottom and make a mark. Now, until we start doing the curves, we actually don't have to do any more measuring to finish this, because we have the start and end points and places where all of our additional lines are going to meet marked out. So the first thing I'm going to do is take my triangle. Because it's got measurements on it, I'm going to line up, actually forget I said because it has measurements on it, to make things easier, I'm going to put my parallel rule on that last mark we made, the one an inch up from the bottom in the center. I'm going to set my triangle so that it's sitting on that first mark we made, 1 inch over from the left hand side. And then I'm simply going to draw from point to the parallel rule. And then I'm going to move my triangle over to the second mark we made at 5 inches and do the same thing again. And then I'm going to connect those two. So you should have a nice U-shape in here now. And the final thing we're going to do is we're going to connect this point that's on the right hand side an inch up to this one that was 3 5/8 from the starting corner. To do that, I'm just going to put my pencil on the third mark we made and travel down to the fourth mark we made. Then I'm going to use my eraser and erasing shield to get rid of these lines here that I just kind of scribbled over a little bit. So the outside one's here and the one in the middle. You are probably going to be much more successful at this than I am because I am drawing fairly dark. So yours should disappear quite a bit easier than mine are going to. Now all we have left to do is to make our curves. For the majority of this, I'm going to use the circle template, even though we aren't going to be drawing full circles. And I've made sure that I've turned it around so that the text is facing in the right direction, so I can easily see the numbers in the right places. The first one I'm looking for is 3/8. That's, if you have it in the right orientation, it is the third circle over from the upper right hand corner. Or we can also use the curve on the upper left hand corner, because if you look at it, it says it's got a 3/8 R, which is actually what we want, because I forgot one of the most important facts about dimensioning corners, also called fillets, and that's that they are dimensioned in radius. So the drawing that I'm working from does say 3/8 radius, which would mean what? Which circle would I actually have had to use? If a radius is half of a diameter, and circles are measured in diameters, and I have a radius of 3/8, then what would the diameter be? 3/4, exactly. So I could use the 3/4 one, which is the circle here that's on the far right hand side. What I would do here is line it up so that the lead of the lines that I already have are in place, and then merely draw around that corner until I have my curve in place. Or I could use this upper corner of the circle template and simply line up its straight edges with the lines that are already there and draw around it. Both are perfectly acceptable, but this thing does only have 4 corners that were specifically designed to draw radii. So the rest of the time, if there was anything else up to 1 5/8 inch in diameter, I would have to use part of the circles. And then the very last corner is this one down here, the lower left hand, or lower right hand corner rather. This one has a radius of 0.5, which means, which circle do I use? Okay, it says it has a radius of 1/2, so which circle do I use? What was that? Which full circle? 1, correct. That one's right here by this curving arrow. And we're just going to do what I showed you on the first one. We're going to line up the corners, or the corners. We're going to line up two tangents with a line that's already there and curve around it. And that's it. All we have to do to finish this now is to erase the bits that we don't want, which are the sharp corners that we're getting rid of. One useful thing about the erasing shield is that it also has curved corners. They aren't going to meet up perfectly with the lines that you're trying to erase, but it does help somewhat.